The most dangerous people aren't always the ones holding the power. Sometimes, they're the ones who refuse to kneel. The crystal chandeliers above my head scattered golden light across the ballroom, making every glass of champagne shimmer like liquid diamonds. Somewhere to my left, a string quartet played softly, elegant enough to drown out the laughter of Manhattan's wealthiest families. The air smelled of expensive perfume, polished marble, and money, so much money that I wondered if one evening inside this hotel cost more than everything I had earned in the last 5 years. I adjusted the cuff of my black waitress uniform for what had to be the 20th time that night. 26 years old. 3 jobs. Community college classes squeezed between double shifts. Rent due in 4 days. And exactly $43 in my checking account. "Claire, table 9 needs another bottle of Bordeaux," my manager whispered sharply as he hurried past. And smile. These people don't tip sad faces. I know. I picked up the wine bottle from the silver tray, forced my shoulders back, and walked toward the VIP section. People always assumed waitresses stopped noticing the rich after a while. They were wrong. I noticed everything. The watches worth luxury cars. The gowns that probably had armed security before arriving. The conversations about mergers and private islands spoken as casually as discussing the weather. Then I noticed him. He stood near the center of the room surrounded by men in tailored black suits. Not surrounded. Protected. Every person who walked past unconsciously stepped aside without being asked. No introductions. No raised voice. No performance. Just presence. He looked to be in his mid-30s, broad-shouldered, with dark hair brushed neatly away from a face carved in sharp lines. His navy tuxedo fit perfectly, but it wasn't the clothing that drew attention. It was his eyes. Cold. Steady. Calculating. The kind of eyes that measured exits before admiring architecture. Someone leaned toward me while I filled another wine glass. "That's Ethan Walker." I looked up. "The Ethan Walker?" The older waiter nodded once. "Don't stare." Too late. His gaze had already found mine. Only for a second. Long enough to make my heartbeat stumble for reasons I couldn't explain. Not fear. Recognition. As though he'd already decided exactly who I was before I'd even reached his table. I lowered my eyes immediately and continued serving drinks. "Stay invisible, Claire." Invisible people finished their shifts. Invisible people paid rent. Invisible people survived. Everything would have stayed that way, if one guest hadn't lurched backward while laughing. His elbow struck my tray. Time slowed. The crystal wineglass tipped. Red Bordeaux arced through the air. Straight across the front of Ethan Walker's perfectly tailored white shirt. Silence. The quartet stopped playing. Conversations evaporated. Hundreds of eyes landed on me. "Oh my God." I whispered. I reached for a napkin instinctively. "I'm so sorry, don't." His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I froze. He looked down at the crimson stain spreading across his shirt before lifting those icy blue-gray eyes back to me. "So," he said calmly enough to make the room even colder, "this is what passes for professionalism now." My fingers tightened around the napkin. It was an accident. Aren't they all? A few guests laughed. Quietly. Carefully. Like people laughing because someone else had started first. Heat rushed into my face. I swallowed hard. "I'm willing to pay for the cleaning." His expression barely changed. "You?" Another ripple of restrained laughter spread through the ballroom. "Do you even know what this jacket costs?" "No," I answered honestly. "And neither does your monthly salary." The words landed harder than the spilled wine. Not because they were cruel. Because they were probably true. Around us, no one moved. No one defended me. I stared at the marble floor for one heartbeat. Then another. Something inside me, something that had survived overdue bills, sleepless nights, and every person who had ever mistaken poverty for weakness, quietly stood up. When I looked back into Ethan Walker's eyes, I wasn't afraid anymore. A man who had never been challenged mistook silence for respect. I was about to remind him there was a difference. The ballroom stayed impossibly quiet. Even the musicians kept their bows suspended above the strings, waiting to see what would happen next. I could still feel hundreds of eyes burning into my back. Some were curious. Some were amused. Most were relieved it wasn't them standing where I was. Ethan Walker didn't move. He simply watched me. Waiting. Expecting me to lower my head, apologize again, and disappear like every employee who had ever crossed his path. Instead, I folded the white linen napkin in my hands and placed it carefully on the silver tray beside me. "I'm sorry your jacket was ruined," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the pounding in my chest. "But you don't get to ruin someone's dignity just because yours got stained." Another silence. Sharper this time. One of the men standing behind Ethan shifted his weight. Another slowly raised his chin. No one had expected that answer. Least of all Ethan. His expression barely changed, but something flickered behind those pale eyes. Interest. "You have courage," he said quietly. "I have self-respect. They're not always the same thing. They are when someone tries to take one from you." A faint murmur spread through the guests. I heard someone whisper, "She's finished." Another answered, "She has no idea who she's talking to." Maybe I didn't. Maybe Ethan Walker controlled half the city. Maybe politicians answered his calls before their own families. Maybe newspapers avoided printing his name for reasons ordinary people would never understand. None of that changed one simple truth. He had embarrassed someone who couldn't fight back. Until now. He stepped one pace closer. Not threatening. Measured. Controlled. Close enough that I caught the scent of cedarwood cologne mixed with expensive whiskey. "You realize," he said, "most people would be apologizing." I already did. I meant sincerely. I met his eyes. I was sincere. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You don't seem to understand consequences." "No." I shook my head. "I understand them perfectly." I smiled, though my hands were trembling behind the tray. "I've lived with consequences my whole life." A flash of surprise crossed his face before disappearing beneath that familiar mask of control. For the first time since we'd spoken, he didn't have an answer waiting. Someone suddenly hurried toward us. "Mr. Walker." A gray-haired event coordinator forced an anxious smile. "Please allow us to replace your jacket immediately. We sincerely apologize for our employee's behavior." Employee. Not Claire. Just another uniform. The coordinator turned toward me. "What are you waiting for? Apologize properly." "I already have." Again. "No." His face reddened. "You'll lose your job." "Maybe. But I'll keep my self-respect." The coordinator looked horrified. Several guests quietly lowered their champagne glasses, sensing the evening had become far more entertaining than the charity auction. Ethan remained completely still. Studying me. Not like a wealthy man examining an employee. Like a chess player realizing the piece he dismissed could still change the game. Then, something unusual happened. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not a smile. Almost one. "Interesting," he murmured. Before I could answer, movement caught the edge of my vision. Near the marble staircase. A man wearing catering whites. Wrong shoes. Heavy black boots beneath spotless kitchen pants. His eyes never looked toward the buffet. They stayed fixed on Ethan. One hand disappeared beneath the serving cart. Every instinct inside me tightened. Something wasn't right. Something was terribly wrong. Instinct has no voice. It simply grabs your heartbeat and tells you to run. I couldn't explain what I saw. Not completely. It wasn't the white catering jacket. It wasn't even the heavy boots beneath perfectly pressed uniform pants. It was the way he moved. Every server I'd worked beside carried nervous energy. We rushed. We balanced trays. We scanned tables, searching for raised hands and empty glasses. This man scanned exits. His eyes drifted across the ballroom with cold precision before settling on Ethan Walker again. Not admiration. Not curiosity. Calculation. The hairs on my arms stood up. I took one slow step toward him. Then another. The silver tray in my hands suddenly felt much heavier. Behind me, the charity auction resumed. A practiced smile returned to the auctioneer's face as though nothing unusual had happened. Guests laughed again. Crystal glasses clinked. The quartet began another elegant melody. The ballroom breathed. Only I couldn't. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. The catering employee stopped beside a service cart positioned near the marble staircase. His left hand remained visible. His right disappeared beneath a folded white tablecloth. Every instinct inside me screamed. "Excuse me," I called. He didn't react. Maybe he hadn't heard. I walked faster. "Sir." Nothing. 20 feet away. 18. 16. Then I saw it. Just for a fraction of a second. Black metal beneath white linen. Not silver serving equipment. Not kitchen utensils. Metal. Matte black. My stomach dropped. A gun. No. The word escaped before I realized I'd spoken aloud. I spun toward Ethan. He was speaking quietly with one of his security men, his attention completely elsewhere. No one else had noticed. How could they? Everyone saw expensive decorations. I saw restaurant staff. Everyone admired elegance. I noticed routines. And that routine was wrong. I abandoned the tray. Crystal shattered against the marble floor behind me. Heads turned instantly. "What is she doing now?" someone muttered. I didn't stop. "Ethan." The name burst from my mouth before I could think. Every security guard reacted. Not toward the fake waiter. Toward me. Hands disappeared beneath tailored jackets. Weapons. One guard stepped directly into my path. "Back away. Listen to me. Step back." "He's got," the sentence never finished. The fake waiter looked up. For the first time. Our eyes met. There was no panic in his face. Only disappointment. Like a hunter realizing his prey had finally looked in the right direction. His hand came out from beneath the tablecloth. Holding a compact black pistol fitted with a suppressor. Time fractured. Someone screamed. Another guest dropped a champagne glass. The music stopped mid-note. The assassin raised the weapon. Not wildly. Professionally. Straight at Ethan Walker's chest. His security team moved. Too late. The nearest bodyguard was still turning. Another reached inside his jacket. A third shoved guests toward the floor. None of them would make it in time. I didn't think. Didn't calculate. Didn't weigh the consequences. I ran. Every lesson life had taught me about staying invisible disappeared beneath one overwhelming certainty. If I did nothing, a man was about to die. Ethan finally followed my gaze. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly as he saw the weapon. The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. There wasn't enough time to shout. There wasn't enough time to run. There was only one impossible choice. And before anyone in that ballroom understood what I was doing, I grabbed the nearest solid object I could find. A heavy silver serving tray resting on an abandoned banquet table. Then I sprinted straight toward the most feared man in New York. People later said I attacked the most feared man in New York. They never realized I was the only one trying to save him. Everything happened inside a single heartbeat. The assassin's finger tightened. Ethan's bodyguards were still reaching for their weapons. Guests were dropping to the marble floor, their screams echoing beneath the crystal chandeliers. I didn't hear any of it. The world narrowed to one impossible equation. One bullet. 1 second. One chance. I gripped the heavy silver serving tray with both hands. It felt absurd. A waitress. Armed with dinnerware. Running toward a man everyone else was trying to protect. Ethan finally turned fully toward me. Confusion flashed across his face. Then irritation. Then something colder. He thought I had lost my mind. "Stop her," one of the guards shouted. 2 security men lunged toward me. I slipped between them, driven by pure instinct rather than speed. The assassin adjusted his aim. Straight at Ethan's head. There wasn't enough time to explain. There wasn't even enough time to warn him. So I made the only decision left. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Not to myself. To him. Then I swung. The edge of the silver tray crashed against the side of Ethan Walker's head with a sharp metallic crack that seemed to split the ballroom in half. His eyes widened. For the briefest fraction of a second, they locked onto mine. Not with anger. With disbelief. The force spun him sideways. His body collapsed heavily against the polished marble floor. Gasps exploded around the room. Someone screamed. "Oh my God." The suppressed gunshot came less than a heartbeat later. Pop. Not the thunderous explosion people expected. Just a dull mechanical cough. The bullet sliced through the space where Ethan's head had been standing less than a second earlier. Instead, it shattered an antique marble column behind him. Stone fragments burst into the air. For one impossible moment, nobody moved. Nobody understood what they had just witnessed. Then chaos erupted. "Gun! Get down! Protect Mr. Walker!" Bodyguards flooded the ballroom. Several tackled guests to the floor. Others fired toward the staircase as the assassin disappeared behind overturned tables. The elegant charity gala transformed into pure panic. I stood frozen beside Ethan. The silver tray slipped from my trembling fingers and clattered loudly across the marble. Blood. A thin line of blood trickled from Ethan's temple where I'd struck him. My stomach twisted. I had to. No one listened. Strong hands grabbed my arms from behind. Someone slammed me face first against a marble pillar. Pain exploded through my shoulder. "She's the attacker." I saw her hit him. She tried to kill the boss. No. I struggled desperately. "There's another man. He had a gun." He fired. A bodyguard forced my wrists behind my back. Another pressed a pistol against the side of my head. "Shut up. I saved him." Liar. Across the ballroom, 4 armed men surrounded Ethan's unconscious body while another checked his pulse. "He has a pulse. Call the doctor. Seal every exit." The assassin was already gone. Vanished into the terrified crowd he'd carefully prepared as his escape. And because he had escaped, every eye turned toward me. Not as a waitress. Not as a witness. As the woman who had just knocked out the most powerful man in the city. The last thing I saw before a black hood was pulled over my head, was Ethan Walker lying motionless beneath a rain of shattered crystal. And every person in that ballroom believed I had tried to murder him. The longest night of my life began in complete darkness. The hood smelled like dust, leather, and stale cigarette smoke. I couldn't see. Couldn't tell where they were taking me. The engine beneath me growled steadily as the vehicle sped through the city, every sharp turn throwing my shoulder against cold steel walls. No one spoke. Not even the men guarding me. Only the occasional crackle of a radio interrupted the silence. Target secured. The boss is conscious. Awaiting further orders. Boss. That meant Ethan was alive. A breath I hadn't realized I was holding escaped my lungs. Thank God. At least the tray had done its job. You sound relieved. The deep voice came from somewhere across the vehicle. I turned instinctively toward it, forgetting I couldn't see. I am. A dry laugh. Most women cry after trying to kill Ethan Walker. I didn't try to kill him. No. I saved his life. Another silence. Longer this time. One of the guards snorted. That's a creative story. You'll see when you check the security cameras. Nobody answered. The ride continued. Minutes blurred together until the vehicle finally slowed. Heavy iron gates creaked open. Gravel crunched beneath the tires. Then stillness. Rough hands pulled me outside. Cold night air brushed my face. I counted every step as they marched me forward. 8. 12. 20. Marble beneath my shoes. A staircase. Large doors opening. Warm air. The scent of polished wood and old whiskey. Somewhere nearby, a grandfather clock chimed midnight. The hood was ripped away. Bright light stabbed my eyes. I blinked repeatedly before the room came into focus. It wasn't a prison. It was a mansion. Massive fireplaces. Dark oak walls. Paintings older than the country itself. Men in black suits stood along both sides of the room, perfectly still. Watching me. Judging me. Every one of them carried a pistol. At the far end stood a giant screen. Security footage paused on a frozen image. Me. Holding the silver tray. One of the men stepped forward. Gray hair. Military posture. Scar running across his jaw. His voice was calm. My name is Victor. I said nothing. I've worked for Mr. Walker for 22 years. Still nothing. If you intended to assassinate him. He looked directly into my eyes. This conversation will be very short. And if I didn't? He studied me for several seconds. Then the truth will save your life. He pressed a button. The security recording began to play. There I was. Running. The assassin raising his weapon. The tray striking Ethan. The suppressed muzzle flash. The bullet ripping into the marble column exactly where Ethan's head had been. The room fell silent. No one breathed. Victor replayed the same 3 seconds. Again. And again. Every angle. Every camera. Every replay told the same story. I hadn't attacked Ethan. I had intercepted a murder. One of the bodyguards slowly lowered his weapon. Another cursed quietly under his breath. Victor closed his eyes for a brief moment. When did you notice him? The boots. His eyebrows lifted. What? Catering staff wear non-slip shoes. I swallowed. He was wearing tactical boots. Several men exchanged surprised glances. And? He never looked at the guests. I pointed toward the frozen image. He kept checking exits. Victor stared at me for what felt like an eternity. Then he nodded almost imperceptibly. Interesting. Before I could ask what he meant, footsteps echoed from the second-floor staircase. Heavy. Steady. Deliberate. Every guard in the room straightened instantly. The atmosphere changed. Not because someone important had entered. Because the most dangerous man in the house had just woken up. I looked toward the staircase. A white bandage wrapped around Ethan Walker's temple. His pale blue eyes found mine immediately. There was no anger in them anymore. Only one unsettling question. Who was I? Power can force obedience. It can never force respect. That night, Ethan Walker discovered the difference. The room remained perfectly still. No one spoke. No one dared to. Every pair of eyes followed Ethan as he descended the staircase with measured steps, one hand brushing lightly against the polished oak railing. A white bandage crossed his temple beneath neatly combed dark hair, the only visible reminder that I had been the one who put him on the marble floor. His expression revealed nothing. Not anger. Not gratitude. Just careful observation. When he reached the final step, Victor moved toward him. Boss. Ethan lifted one finger. Victor immediately fell silent. His pale blue eyes never left mine. You. His voice was calm. You hit harder than I expected. A nervous laugh escaped one of the younger guards before dying instantly under Ethan's glance. I folded my arms. You were standing in front of a bullet. So I've been told. He walked closer until only a few feet separated us. Close enough for me to notice the faint bruise along his jaw. Close enough for him to notice I hadn't taken a single step backward. You could have shouted. I did. You could have run. I did. You could have warned my security. They were busy pointing guns at me. For the first time, the corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Almost. Victor cleared his throat. The surveillance footage confirms everything. I've seen it. Ethan answered without looking away from me. Every angle. Silence settled again. The guards shifted uneasily. They were waiting. Waiting for punishment. Waiting for orders. Waiting to see whether the waitress who had struck their boss would leave this room alive. Instead, Ethan did something none of them expected. He inclined his head. Barely. Just enough to acknowledge another human being. I owe you my life. The words echoed through the hall. Several guards exchanged startled glances. Victor lowered his eyes. I realized then how rare those 5 words must have been. You don't owe me anything, I replied quietly. His eyebrows lifted. No. You were the one in danger. You prevented my death. I prevented someone from being murdered. He studied me carefully. As far as debts go, I don't keep score. Another long silence. Then Ethan looked toward one of his men. Bring the case. Within seconds a black leather briefcase was placed on the mahogany table between us. It clicked open. Stacks of $100 bills. Perfectly arranged. More money than I had ever imagined seeing in one place. There are $500,000. He spoke as if discussing tomorrow's weather. Take it. I stared at the money. Then back at him. No. One of the guards actually inhaled sharply. Victor blinked. Ethan remained motionless. I don't think you understood the amount. I understood. You could change your life. My life isn't for sale. It's not payment. It feels like it. His eyes narrowed slightly. What do you want, then? The answer arrived before I could second-guess it. I want you to remember that the woman serving your dinner deserves the same respect as the man sitting at your table. No one moved. The fireplace crackled softly behind us. Ethan looked at the untouched briefcase. Then back at me. I embarrassed you. Yes. In front of everyone. Yes. He took one slow breath. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter than before. I was wrong. The word stunned every man in the room. Including me. I judged you before I knew you, he continued. I mistook your uniform for your worth. His gaze never wavered. I don't make that mistake twice. Before I could answer, the heavy front doors burst open. One of Ethan's men rushed inside, breathing hard. Boss. Every head turned. The guard's face had gone pale. We found the assassin's escape vehicle. He swallowed once. And your enemies already know about the waitress. A cold weight settled in my stomach. The guard finished the sentence that changed everything. They're hunting her now. The first time a man risks everything for you, you wonder if it's gratitude. The second time, you realize it's become personal. The words hung in the air like a winter storm. They're hunting her now. No one spoke after that. I looked from the frightened guard to Ethan. His expression didn't change. It became colder. Sharper. The kind of silence that made armed men instinctively straighten their backs. How many? Ethan asked. At least 6 confirmed operatives. And the others? We've lost them. Victor stepped beside him. The assassin failed. They'll eliminate every witness. Including me. The realization settled over me with surprising calm. I'd spent my entire life worrying about overdue rent, broken down cars, and whether my paycheck would stretch until Friday. Now, someone wanted me dead. I should leave. Every head turned toward me. If I'm the target, I shouldn't stay here. No. Ethan's answer came immediately. I'm not asking. I wasn't asking either. I met his eyes. I won't hide behind your men. You misunderstand. He took one measured step closer. They're not hunting you because of who you are. His voice remained steady. They're hunting you because of me. I folded my arms. That sounds like your problem. A few guards exchanged nervous glances. No one spoke to Ethan Walker that way. He surprised them again. I agree. The room fell silent. I made you part of this the moment they saw you save my life. His eyes held mine. I'll finish what I started. And what exactly did you start? My responsibility. The word caught me off guard. Responsibility. Not ownership. Not obligation. Responsibility. Victor quietly nodded toward the windows. Outside, rain had begun falling. Heavy drops struck the glass with steady rhythm. Another guard rushed into the room. Boss. He handed Ethan a tablet. Security footage. A traffic camera. A grainy image of my apartment building. 3 black SUVs parked across the street. 2 men watching the entrance. One pretending to read a newspaper. Another speaking into an earpiece. My heart stopped. My apartment. They've already been there. Victor answered softly. They arrived 23 minutes ago. My neighbors. We evacuated the building. Relief flooded through me so suddenly my knees almost gave way. They're safe? So far. I closed my eyes. Thank God. When I opened them again, Ethan was still watching me. Not studying. Watching. As though trying to understand why my first concern had been strangers instead of myself. You didn't ask about your belongings. I can replace furniture. You didn't ask about your bank account. I'll earn more money. You asked about your neighbors. I shrugged. They've done nothing wrong. Something unreadable crossed his face. Respect. Maybe. Or perhaps confusion. He turned toward his security team. Effective immediately. Every guard stood straighter. Claire Bennett is under my protection. No hesitation. No one approaches her without my authorization. Yes, boss. Double the perimeter. Yes, boss. Rotate the surveillance teams every 2 hours. Understood. Within seconds the mansion came alive. Radios crackled. Vehicles started outside. Armed men disappeared into the rain. An entire security operation, because of one waitress. I looked at Ethan. This is insane. It is. You don't even know me. No. His answer was quiet. But I know one thing. He glanced toward the security footage frozen on the screen. The image of me running toward a gun instead of away from it. When everyone else was trying to save my life. He paused. You were the only one willing to risk yours. Before I could respond, every light inside the mansion suddenly went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Then, 3 suppressed gunshots echoed from somewhere outside. The attack had already begun. The night wasn't trying to kill me anymore. It was trying to change both of us. Darkness swallowed the mansion. Every chandelier died at once. The fireplace faded into a dull orange glow before someone kicked over the burning logs, leaving only drifting embers across the hardwood floor. For one terrifying second, no one could see. Then discipline replaced panic. Night vision. Cover the east wing. Protect the boss. Flashlights snapped on like white knives cutting through the darkness. Armed guards rushed into formation, their footsteps echoing through the halls. Someone grabbed my wrist. I reacted instinctively, trying to pull away. It's me. Ethan. His grip was firm but careful. Stay behind me. I don't need. A bullet punched through the tall window before I could finish. Glass exploded across the marble floor. The shot wasn't loud. The silencer turned it into a sharp crack. Every guard fired toward the gardens. More windows shattered. Rain poured through the openings as alarms finally screamed to life. They're inside the perimeter. Victor shouted from somewhere ahead. They breached the south wall. Ethan stepped in front of me without hesitation. His shoulders blocked the broken window completely. I stared at him. You're exposing yourself. They're aiming at you. They're aiming at you because of me. No. He looked back for only a second. They're aiming at you because you chose to save me. Another burst of gunfire echoed outside. One of the guards stumbled backward, clutching his arm before 2 others pulled him behind cover. The attackers weren't trying to storm the mansion. They were probing. Testing. Looking for weakness. Ethan spoke into a radio. Seal the lower level. Already done. Move Claire to the panic room. I pulled my hand free. I'm not hiding. His eyes met mine. This isn't a debate. It never is with you, is it? He paused. The silence between us lasted longer than the gunfire. Finally, he said quietly, I'm trying to keep you alive. And I'm trying to keep your people alive. I pointed toward the wounded guard. They're bleeding while we're arguing. Without waiting for permission, I crossed the hallway and knelt beside him. Blood soaked through his sleeve. It's superficial. He gritted his teeth. The bullet passed through. Hold still. I tore a strip from the bottom of my blouse and wrapped it tightly around the wound. Years of working double shifts had taught me more first aid than I ever expected to need. Keep pressure here. The guard stared at me. You're helping me? You do the same. He looked away. I don't know if I would. You should. When I stood again, Ethan was still watching. Not my hands. My face. What? I asked. You had every reason to hate us. I disliked your attitude. I shrugged. Not your humanity. For the first time since we'd met, the hardness in his expression cracked. Only slightly. Enough for me to see the exhausted man beneath the reputation. You know what everyone sees when they look at me? He asked. A mafia boss. They see power. I shook my head. I see someone whose forgotten people can follow because they respect you. I glanced toward the injured guard, now sitting upright. Not only because they're afraid. He didn't answer. He couldn't. Because deep down, he knew I was right. A radio suddenly crackled. Victor's voice came through, tense but controlled. Boss, we intercepted one of the attackers. A pause. He says this wasn't the real operation. The room grew still. Ethan slowly took the radio. What does he mean? Victor answered with 5 words that froze every heartbeat in the mansion. They never came for you. Another pause. They came for Claire. He thought he was protecting my life. Neither of us realized I had already begun saving his. The mansion fell silent. Not because the gunfire had stopped. Because Victor's last words refused to leave the room. They came for Claire. Rain continued hammering the broken windows. Lightning illuminated shattered glass scattered across the marble floor like frozen stars. No one moved. Then Ethan spoke. Bring him in. 2 guards dragged the captured attacker into the hall. His face was bruised. His hands were bound behind his back. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth, yet he smiled. Not the smile of a defeated man. The smile of someone convinced he had already won. Ethan stood in front of him. You know who I am. The prisoner laughed quietly. Everyone does. Then answer the question. Another laugh. You've spent 20 years building an empire. He looked past Ethan. And one waitress destroyed it in a single night. I frowned. I don't even know you. No. His smile widened. But everyone knows you now. He nodded toward Ethan. You were supposed to die. A long pause. When you didn't. His eyes settled on me again. Our employers changed the objective. Why? The man shrugged. Dead witnesses tell no stories. Ethan's expression never changed. Take him away. The guards pulled the prisoner toward the door. Just before disappearing into the hallway, the man looked over his shoulder one final time. You can protect her today, Walker. His grin returned. But can you protect your soul? The heavy doors closed. Silence returned. No one said a word. Finally, I exhaled. So. I looked at Ethan. What happens now? He answered without hesitation. I end this. I shook my head. No. His eyes narrowed. No. You don't end hatred by creating more of it. You think I have another option? I think every decision you've made brought you here. He stared at me. You don't know anything about my world. You're right. I stepped closer. I only know what I've seen. He waited. I saw a man who embarrassed someone weaker than himself. His jaw tightened. I saw that same man apologize when he realized he was wrong. The room remained completely still. I saw someone willing to stand in front of bullets for a stranger. I smiled faintly. So maybe you're not the man everyone keeps telling me you are. For the first time since we'd met. Ethan looked away. Only for a moment. As though my words weighed more than every weapon inside the mansion. Victor quietly approached. The convoy is ready. Ethan nodded. Then, to everyone's surprise, he turned back toward me. There is one place left before sunrise. I raised an eyebrow. What place? The hotel. The gala? He nodded. Everyone who watched me humiliate you is still talking about tonight. I didn't understand. So they deserve to hear the rest of the story. Less than an hour later, the ballroom had been secured. Broken glass had been swept away. The orchestra had long since left. Only staff, investigators, and a handful of shaken guests remained. The moment Ethan Walker entered, every conversation stopped. He walked to the center of the room. The same place where he had looked down on me only hours earlier. Then, in front of everyone, he turned toward me. I owe Claire Bennett more than my life. His voice echoed beneath the crystal chandeliers. I owe her an apology. He lowered his head. Not dramatically. Not theatrically. Simply, sincerely. I judged her by her uniform instead of her character. He looked directly into my eyes. I was wrong. No one spoke. The silence felt almost sacred. I realized then that the strongest man in the room wasn't the one who commanded armed guards or built an empire. It was the man who had finally found the courage to lay down his pride. And in that quiet moment, I understood something that would stay with me forever. Power can make people fear you. But only humility can make them remember your name.